is trending this morning. That's nice, isn't it? Something lovely to wake up to and have a look at as you're scrolling through. And the reason is there have been accusations that Tory MPs are allowing water companies to dump raw sewage in our rivers. There was a proposal to change the Environment Bill, and it was to make companies reduce the amount of raw sewage they put in our rivers. That was rejected by MPs. So many people are accusing those MPs of allowing rivers and watercourses to become more polluted. The MPs say safeguards already exist and new measures would cost billions. As it stands, the Environment Agency allows water utilities to release sewage into rivers after extreme weather events, such as prolonged heavy rain. Let's talk about this and find out what's actually going on. Dave Rumble is Chief Executive of Wessex Rivers Trust, based in Salisbury. Hi, Dave. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning, Marie. It's great to join you this morning.
What's your reaction to, the outcome of this vote, really? Talk me through how you're feeling about it.
I think we're disappointed, really. I don't think it's helpful to dwell on the semantics of the debate and whether MPs voted in favour of more sewage pollution. Of course they didn't, but we do feel that MPs missed a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really toughen up the legislation because it needs it. I do actually think that it shows that the MPs were out of kilter with the public sentiment, which is really, really strong at the moment. There's a lot of very passionate activity on social media, which has, I think, just been bubbling up for a long time. So in my world, sewage is always on the agenda. People are talking about it all the time, and it's bubbled up as an issue. And I think that, there's out of kilter talk between the public and the politicians. And I think this vote was a missed opportunity. It's an urgent problem. It's a growing problem with house building, with climate change. All of these factors contribute to the problem of sewage pollution and the chance that, historic underinvestment in our sewage infrastructure is just going to get worse.
Let's talk about sewage pollution in the rivers that you help to look after around Wiltshire. How much of a problem is this?
Okay, well, our patch is Wessex, and in the middle of Wessex is the Hampshire Avon, which actually runs through Wiltshire. The Hampshire Avon is an internationally significant chalk stream. Chalk streams are a unique habitat globally, and the Avon is one of the best of the best. And yet it's only about 70% of the catchment is meeting good status at the moment, so let alone high status, which arguably it should be. So it's a river that is dealing with lots of issues despite its global importance. And whilst there are many factors contributing to that lack of peak performance of the river, sewage discharge is definitely one important factor.
Okay, well, at this point, let's bring in Danny Kruger, who's Conservative MP for Devizes. Danny Kruger, you voted against amending the rules, so and you've spoken about this on your own social media. How do you feel hearing Dave talk that we've missed an opportunity here to improve the health and the quality of our rivers?
Well, I don't think we've missed a chance, but I share his general point, and Dave's right. There is a huge amount of public distress about the way that water companies discharge sewage into the rivers. The problem is it's a much more complicated question than the amendment which we voted down proposed, because that simply would have said that water companies are banned from discharging sewage, which of course is exactly where we'd like to get to. But we have decades, probably 100 years of underinvestment in our pipes and our sewage systems. Meanwhile, we've been developing, growing the number of houses at great pace and haven't been improving our own use of water in that time. So we've got a bunch of problems, which, by the way, Dave and others are doing great work locally to address. There's an environment bill going through, which this was an amendment to, which itself puts a significant number of new obligations on the water companies to improve the sewage system. But it is something that is going to take time. And I'm afraid to say, if we simply did all the investment that is necessary now to stop all sewage going to the rivers, which, as you said, only happens when there's a storm surge and the system can't cope, it would cost us hundreds of billions of pounds. It would be like the COVID response budget all in one go. So we simply can't do it right now. It's going to take a long time. But we can improve the system significantly. And there's a whole bunch of quite complicated tactical measures that need to be taken to enable that.
Okay, so are water companies being scrutinised enough? Because, a lot of sewage is still going into the rivers.
Yeah.
The Environment Agency said for the first time last year that no river had achieved good chemical status. That's pretty appalling, isn't it, for a government that said they wanted to leave the environment in a better state than they found it?
Yes. I mean, some rivers are getting healthier than others, but overall, yes, we have a major problem. Partly it's because the Environment Agency doesn't enforce the rules sufficiently. We need to improve that. Partly it's because some water companies, and not others, are still quite slapdash in the way they approach their job. It's because we don't have good enough data on where exactly the problems are. It's because we still have too much extraction. So we're taking too much water out of the rivers. Too much chemicals are going into them. There's a whole bunch of issues. And the water companies, some of them have, I think, improved their performance, by the way. I think Wessex Water deserves some praise, actually, for their approach. Others not so good. So we do need to improve the regulation of them. And we all, as consumers of water, need to think about the way we use water. And particularly, if there's new housing, how's that designed to save rainwater? And how do we ensure we don't just contribute to the problem with overdevelopment? So there's a whole bunch of issues we need to get right.
Okay, and is this happening? Is the government putting more scrutiny on these water companies that aren't doing enough?
Absolutely. So there's the Environment Bill, if it passes, which I'm sure it will impose a new obligation on the water companies to mitigate, to reduce sewage discharges, to make a plan to stop it altogether over time, and also to ensure that they have the funding to do so. At the moment, the government insists that it regulates the regulator. So Ofwat, which regulates the water companies, is itself regulated by the government. So there's a chain of regulation that ultimately, is the government's responsibility, and that's what this Environment Bill is going to do. It's going to ensure that the water companies can make the investments in the sewage treatment and in the pipes that they need in order to stop the discharges.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today. Dave Rumble from Wessex Rivers Trust, I'll come back to you. Does any of that sound reassuring enough? Do you feel confident that things are going to get better?
I think Danny makes some good points. I think the juggernaut is turning around slowly but surely. Water companies know they've got to invest. I'd just like to come back on the point of cost. I think, any evaluation of the cost of doing all this, urgent work often ignores the cost of not doing it. So, what is the impact on our ecosystems? What is the impact on people who need rivers for their health and well-being? As we've seen during lockdown, rivers have just been cherished like never before. The economy, so much economic activity happens on the rivers with fishing. And of course, water supply, we're drinking the water that we're polluting. And the more pollution that happens, the more treatment, and that puts bill prices up. So there are lots of hidden costs of not doing it. Okay. But I would argue that the cost calculation is an overestimate by quite a big factor, because it's based on old ways of doing things. Certainty is something that, of course, the water industry likes, and pouring concrete and sort of engineered solutions is their all too often go-to solution. But many water companies are waking up to the fact that there are other softer, easier to deploy solutions involving, managing land better, public behaviour change, and so on. All of these can contribute and importantly be deployed straight away to address the urgency.
Dave, thank you very much for your time today as well. Much appreciated. That's Dave Rumble, Chief Executive of Wessex Rivers Trust. They're based in Salisbury. You also heard from the MP for Devizes, Danny Kruger. So if you've seen something about, the government have voted to put more sewage in the rivers, it's not quite as straightforward as that, but that's what we've been told this morning.